broadcast is part of the ISRobots radio network. Visit ISRobots.com for this and many other nerd/nostalgia-related podcasts. You won't be sorry for long. Prepare yourself for an in-depth examination of something mundane from ISRobots' day-to-day existence. Welcome to This Boring Life.
Hello, my kids. It is me, ISRobots, and I am back for another episode of This Boring Life, the show in which we take a look at the origin story of me, ISRobots, and the way we do it is one topic at a time, and the topic we are going to tackle this week is my early days, the early days of my existence, my time in the land of Lincoln, the great state of Illinois. When I was a young sprat, way back in the day, I lived in the town of Oak Lawn, Illinois. This is where I lived before we moved to where I live now, Santa Rosa, California. Oak Lawn it's a small suburb of Chicago, as I recall, and all of this is going to be like deep cut reflections. This is going to be like a lot of my earliest types of memories. So they may not be entirely accurate. Not that I'm ever going to say any of my memories are entirely accurate, because who knows? I remember hearing one time that you're not actually remembering the actual memory. What you are remembering is the memory of the memory. So every time you think of the memory, you're actually thinking about the last time you thought about it. So who knows how near they are to what actually happened. But as I recall, you could see Chicago from where we were. You could see the skyscrapers, the skyline, all that stuff, Sears Tower, whatever. From the side of our house. I seem to remember it was the left side, but that may not be entirely accurate. One thing that I recall about Illinois is it is flat. I remember it being completely flat, and that's why you were able to see so far away. Here in Santa Rosa, the neighborhood I live in, is a place called Rincon Valley, and we're surrounded by what is known as the Rincon Mountains. They're not giant mountains by any stretch. They're probably tall hills. We call them, the hills, but we're surrounded on all sides by that. So you can't see past that point. I remember in Illinois that you could see off for miles in the distance. It's just a completely different landscape than where I live now. We lived on a street called West 90th Street. It was 5923 West 90th Street. I have the address written down on the inside cover of the Bible I got when I left my Bible study class for the final time back in Illinois. We'll talk about that too. The house that we lived in was a 1-story, 2-bedroom house on sort of the middle portion of the street. We weren't on the corner, but we weren't completely in the middle. Just one of the more average houses. It was just like a random suburban neighborhood. We had a nice size backyard, as I recall. I remember we didn't have a fence in the front of the house, only like one tree. The whole street was open. And this is me doing this largely from, memory. But the backyard had a fence with a gate that opened up into an alley. You would leave the garbage cans in the alley behind the house, and the truck would skadoosh through the different alleyways, picking up the cans. I remember we had these, really heavy-duty garbage cans, the kind that you don't really see nowadays. Nowadays, it feels like most of them are they're aluminum, like disposable baking tins with lids, but these were super heavy duty garbage cans. We used to use the lids as shields, and we would go at each other with sticks full force and never even do damage to these. The garbage man would go down, they would jump out, grab the cans, throw it into the truck, and then just chuck the cans back at the ground. I remember that too. That was why you had to have those super strong cans. We had a side yard on one side of the house, the right side, as I recall, and then on the left side, we had a large shared sort of yard with our neighbors, the Gingerowskis. I don't remember if it was a shared deal or if the yards just kind of merged at that point, and we would use that space kind of together. It didn't really matter whose stuff was on what side so much. On the other side of the house, the side yard, there was a tree. There was a tree there, and I would play over in that yard just about as much as I did the backyard. I really dug that tree because at one point a bird must have lived there, because there was a fairly large bird nest that was abandoned. I remember playing with this bird's nest all the time. So I'd be putting my Star Wars guys in there and taking them out, and they would hide in there. It was their base. I would sometimes put my stuffed animals in the good old side yard bird nest. I would also play in the mud. I used to love the mud, and the side yard was where the backyard hose was located, and I would make mud puddles and then play with my Star Wars and my Fisher-Price adventure people and stuff. They would have mud battles. I would build little walls and buildings out of mud as, the best I could. I would build up small walls and then put leaves on the top, and they would fight and destroy these things. And then sometimes they would bury each other rather in the mud, and then I would dig them all out, take them, hose them off, and then go back inside. You could go through the backyard, through the fence, through the alley, and then all the way to the other block. That was how I would get to school in the morning. The school was over in that direction. That was also the direction of the park. So we would go through the back a lot. One thing I remember is we'd go through the back, and then over on the corner of the next block, there was this enormous house. All the houses around there were all kind of the same size, more or less, kind of track houses. But then there was one really big old house that we would always think was super weird and creepy. And then one day we were hanging around at the school doing whatever, and we saw the cafeteria lady. We didn't have a full-on cafeteria because it wasn't really that type of school yet. It was mostly a brown bag school. I don't know the deal with that. We didn't have cafeterias in Illinois. Everybody would just bring their lunchbox or their lunch bag, and they would eat out in the schoolyard. But when I moved to California, it was straight up eating lunch in the cafeteria, no food allowed on the playground tip. But we had a small lunch area where you could get whatever you milks, things like that. And then once a week we'd have something called Hot Dog Day. I'll talk about Hot Dog Day in a bit. That's one of my best memories of that era. But this was the kind of place with just condiments. So anyhow, one day we were walking and we saw the lady who ran the lunch area go into that house. We were like, that is so weird. That must be the lunch lady's house. And we kind of stalked it and looked at it for a long while, and we determined that she seemed to live in there by herself. So one day we got the courage and we went over and we knocked on the door to I don't know what we were going to do. We were going to go tell her that we went to school and say hi. I have no idea. Who knows what you're going to do when you're a kid? You would just do stuff like that. So we went over there and knocked on the door, and she opened it up, and she was super nice, and she gave us popsicles. And then as we were walking away, she said, "Don't ever come here again." And she slammed the door really hard. I get it. I don't want little kids following me home and hanging out at my house anyway, but it was just so aggressive at the time. We were like, wow, I can't believe how nice she is. She gave us popsicles. And then when we were walking away, slam! We're like, what a mean old lunch lady, just like we thought. Very, very funny little story to me. Anyway, maybe it was like a you had to be there kind of story. We had a pool. We had a Doughboy pool in the backyard. That was cool, man. I really enjoyed having a pool of my own. I love to swim, and this is where I got my start. It was like a 5-6 foot deep Doughboy pool. Nothing special, nothing big, but during those like super humid oak lawn summers, this was a godsend. I spent a lot of time in there. I had like a mask and a snorkel, and I remember like snorkeling back and forth across that pool for what seemed like hours at a time, but it was probably just like minutes at a time. And then I had a boat. It was like a small boat. I don't know where we got it from. It was like an inflatable boat. It had like plastic pegs where you could, I don't know what you call them. They're not pegs. They're little plastic openings where you could stick oars through. I didn't have any oars, but I would float in this boat all the time. I dug it, man. I would get in this boat and I would paddle across the pool as quick as I can. Then I would jump over the side with my snorkel and my mask on. This pool was great. Here's a pool story I may have told before, but I'm going to tell it again because it's an important part of my Chicago lore. We still talk about it to this day, not all the time, but it does come up every once in a while. There was this family on the corner called the Carvellos, and they were like the tough family. You know, they would fix bikes and motorcycles in their front yard, and they had like cars parked in the front yard. You know, real like biker grease monkey types with pompadours and like cigarettes rolled up in their sleeves and stuff. And their son his name was Joey, and he wasn't like a good friend of mine, but he would sometimes hang out around the yard. And then one time during the winter, I remember I was out in the backyard with my snowsuit on. I had like a full-on snowsuit that would like zip up the front with my ski cap and my moon boots, you know, those plastic silvery boots that every kid would wear in the snow. I was out there in my moon boots and my snowsuit, and Joey came over and he's like, "Hey, let's go goof around on your pool." And there was one thing that was like a no-no, was do not goof around in the pool during the winter. It's dangerous. And I'm like, "No way, Joey, I don't want to do that." But he's like, "Look, I'm going to show you. Let's go over there. I'm going to walk on the ice." And I'm like, "Don't do it, dude. Don't do it." And I want to mention that he was just wearing like normal jeans and like a windbreaker jacket. And it was like full on snow outside. I remember this so distinctly. Homeboy was not in the snowsuit like I was, which made him seem so much cooler than me. And I'm sure in reality he was a lot colder than me because this was pretty frigid as I recall. So at any rate, he goes up the ladder of the pool, and then he walks out onto the surface, and he's like, See, I told you I could do it. And I start to hear the ice cracked. It wasn't like frozen all the way through. It was just frozen on the top. And I start to hear the ice crack, and boom! Homeboy goes in, and he's down there under the ice. I see him like trying to push his way up, and it's not like super thick ice. He's gonna make it. I see him like pushing, and I'm like, oh my gosh! I'm freaking out, like trying to reach down in the hole for him, when my mom like burst out the back door, and she runs over and like smashes the ice with her forearm and pulls Kid out. It was amazing. She pulled him out by one arm, and she was like dangling him up in the air, and he was, you know, obviously soaked to the bone. His clothes were like pulled in tight on him, and he was like, bah, 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 bah. So she ran him in the house and she sent him into the bathroom and told him, to take off his wet clothes. And she sent in some of my gear, which he put on, and she sat him in front of the heater and gave him like a cup of cocoa or something. I don't know what it was. We'll say cocoa. She gave him a hot toddy, whatever. And then when he warmed up a bit, she bundled him up and we walked him back around the corner to his house, and she knocked on the door again. And when they opened it up, his greaser dad, his 50s style dad with the pompadour and like the imagine Schneider, Schneider from One Day at a Time. He was like that. He's like, "What can I do for you?" And my mom's like, "Your son was over at my house. He tried to walk in the pool and he fell in. He's really cold, whatever." And he's like, "Don't worry, I'll take care of it." And he smacked him upside the head, this was like a real common occurrence back in Illinois. People like smacking their kids upside the dome. But I was like, dang, he almost died. It seems like in my eyes he almost died. If my mom wouldn't have come out with the super strength, who knows what would have happened. And his response was to cuff him upside the ear. But that's kind of like, that's how it was, man. Illinois was a lot different than it was in California. That is for sure. What else did we do? What else was going on? There was a lot of snow related hijinks, which is wild for me to think back upon because I haven't seen snow in years. There have been a couple times where it's like had a small dropping of snow in Santa Rosa. I think it's happened twice since we've moved here, but it's not even anything. It doesn't really cover the ground. It's kind of like it'll just fall down. You see like a bit of snow because it's cold and also moist. In like Calistoga and a couple other places that are higher up, there has been snow. I've seen it on the mountains, but it's nothing that we experience in any way. You can go to Tahoe or whatever and do that thing, but that's like all on the skiing tip. And I've never been skiing, never been in my life. I've sledded. We went down to Tahoe and we've sledded a couple times, and that's fun. It's super fun. But back in Oak Lawn, the snow was it was like a fact of life. And I'm sure for all you guys out there who live in snowy conditions, you're thinking, this is so dumb. Of course snow is a part of life, but you got to understand, man, we don't ever see it. So it's weird to think back and think that it was something that was going on all the time for me. I remember trying to make snow angels, and I was never super successful at that. When you see people do it in TV or movies, they are on, it looks like a lot of snow, like a big layer of snow. So when they make the angel, the indent has snow underneath it. Every time I would do it, it always felt like the underneath surface was dirt. So my snow angel would just kind of look like a mud angel. But that could have just been my experience. I was a kid, and I wasn't very good at anything. We would have snowball fights, which was super dope. Getting up with a snowball hurts. On cartoons or whatever, it looks like they just kind of sploosh, and then you're hit with it. But in real life, they tended to be a bit icy, from what I recall. And there were always creepy kids you had to be wary about, like that kid who fell in my pool, and kids like that who might put a rock inside of the snowball. I saw that happen more than once. I saw people like break ice puddles and dip the snowballs in the ice, try to make ice balls. That would happen too. We would build snowmen, which I always thought was fun, but it never felt like there were thick layers of snow in my yard to where you could make like really big snowmen. Like you make the ball. This is what I recall. You make the ball, and then you start to roll it in the snow, and you hope that the other snow connects with the snow in your ball, and the ball gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And this is probably like really silly for all you people who live out there in snowy conditions. I am saying this for like people like me who live in, a more of a warmer climate and may not have experienced this thing. These are all just distant memories. They're super wild to me. But you would you would roll the snowball in the snow and it'd get bigger and bigger and bigger, and then you'd have the biggest ball on the bottom, medium ball, then a small ball for a head. I never had a carrot either, like homies would do in like Christmas movies and stuff. I never had the carrot to put in for the nose or the coal for the eyes. I was mostly like poking holes and trying to make it look that way. But they would always be like only a few feet high, maybe like 2 or 3 feet high at the most. When you would see dudes, they're making like 6 or 7 feet snowmen. That must be for these like super Arctic conditions. I don't know. It was just something I remember doing. We would also go over to my uncle's house in Burbank. That was the next town over, and they had some sort of a hill there. I remember it not being like a super big hill, but it definitely was a hill with an incline where people would, like a sharp incline. A hill obviously has an incline, but like it was a sharp hill, and people would go sledding there, and I remember doing that every year, and that was the dopest of the dope. I still think that it would be dope to go and ride a sled. I had like a wooden sled with metal rails on the bottom, blades, I guess, whatever you call it. The blades were red. It was one of those like super prototypical sleds that you see people have on TV. I still have it. It's in the garage. I have it mounted on the wall. It's one of my last like Illinois remnants. I have a few things, but we would do the sled deal, and some guys would have like toboggans or whatever. I don't think that the full-on plastic disc that people use now, like the plastic bowl disc, where you hold onto the sides, I don't think that was invented at the time, because I don't have a lot of recollections of dudes using that disc. I don't think I ever saw it until recently. When we went and sledded in Tahoe, we used the discs, and that was fun, man. You go fast. I don't remember my sled going super fast, and a lot of times, like, the weight of the sled wouldn't allow it to, like, go all the way down. Like, it would just kind of get caught up. You sort of have to glide over the surface of the snow. You can't hope to cut through the snow unless you got, like, horses, Clydesdales pulling you or whatever. But I would go down and get stuck a lot of the times. My cousin had, like, a board, as I recall. I don't remember exactly. It was like a board, and he would like sit on it and had strings. I guess he would hold onto the strings, and he would go down on that, and he could use them to control himself to a degree. That was pretty cool. Sledding was dope, dude. When we went to Tahoe, it was so much fun riding the disc down the hills. I hurt myself though. I had done it, like, the run a few times, and I was just like, I had this brilliant idea that I was going to grab the thing behind me and sort of like put it near my butt, right? And I was going to run and jump, and I was going to jump and connect like at a perfect angle and just like shoot down at lightning speed, right? But, I'm no Olympic level athlete or anything. I ran and I leapt in the air and I hit the ground with such a thud. I don't even know if that's possible to like connect at the perfect angle where you don't really, like, the impact is minimalized by the angle that you're hitting it at the speed that you're going. I don't even know if that's possible. It's definitely impossible for me, but I gave it a shot. I was having some bravado, I guess. I usually don't, so this was a little odd, but I hit the thing so hard. I was laid up, like, honestly laid up for like a week straight. It messed up my back so bad. I was in, like, bedridden with like bedpans and stuff. I was still getting up and, going to the restroom. So I wasn't like completely laid out, but I wasn't doing any kind of a physical labor. That's for sure. That messed me up something awful, but it was fun. And I didn't really feel the blow until the next day. So I still had fun sledding. I ripped my pants. I remember I was wearing like green army style pants, not like army pants, but like green cargo-y pants and stuff. I thought those would be like my outdoorsy gear, but I tore my pants too. You need those snow pants, that nylon snow pants that you wear. The wife has a pair now. She got them at the Goodwill. They're like a nylon pants with like suspenders. We haven't had the chance to use them, but that's what you need for like outdoor winter skiing type activities, sledding type activities rather. I've never skied. Skiing seems for, like, people who are more upper crust than me, I remember the more wealthy kids at Rincon Valley Middle School would go off on skiing trips.
I've lived skiing for over 50 years, but I hate waiting in line. And in the whole world, only Squaw Valley guarantees no waiting in line or your money back. So what are you waiting for?
Squaw Valley, no waiting in line or your money back.
That seemed wild, man. I've never done it, those ski lifts. The idea of sitting in those chairs and going up. It's too much, man. It's too much for me. One last snow thing that I think about from time to time. I used to like lay down face first in the snow, like all spread eagle. I have no idea why. I remember thinking that this was like the funnest thing. I would lay down like face first into the snow with my arms like back behind me, like I'm in flight, sort of, with my arms back, going super fast. I have no idea what that was about, but I would come in the house with like this bright pink face from, like the contact with the snow kind of, slightly burned your skin. Sometimes it leaves it pink. And I would come in with like this pink face, and my mom would get all, because, normally you'll come in with like pink cheeks from like the wind hitting you or, just the general cold. But like my whole face would be bright pink. I have no idea what I was doing. I would just like lay face down in the snow like all the time. What else? Oh, I used to hang out with the neighbor kid a lot. There was this family next door, the Gingerowskis, if I remember correctly, and they had a son named Steve he was like a couple years older than me, but we would hang out. We would, proximity pal type stuff. I would sometimes go into his house. His house had a basement. We didn't have a basement, and they had the whole thing finished, and they had it set up like a bar, like they had like an actual bar with, stools and alcohol in the back, and they had a pool table and a TV down there, and that was dope. We would hang out there a lot. I don't think we played pool very much. Every once in a while, we'd kind of like poke around at it, but we were little, we didn't have any idea of that sort of stuff. We would play with our Legos down there. I remember having Legos, and we would play with our Migos. I know for a fact that I had a Batman and Robin Migo because I have a real strong memory of his leg coming loose and no one being able to put it back on, and that was the end of him. I had a one-legged Robin for years. It was very, very traumatic because I didn't have a ton of toys, and losing one to an injury like that. And, Batman and Robin were like two of my key dudes, but we would play with those down in the basement. We would watch TV. It was so like early 80s, late 70s with the wood panel and the wood bar and the wooden stools, the big mirrored back, and, like the hanging beer lamp over the pool table, like with Miller Lite on it or whatever. We were down there all the time. What would I do with Steve? We would sometimes shoot baskets in his driveway. We would play Star Wars Men. I had red carpet, like an orange red carpet in the living room, as I recall. And we would like to pretend like that was Tatooine, because it was desert-like, and we would have our Jawas and our sand people and stuff, and we would do the desert scenes. And then my mom would always get annoyed with us playing in the living room, as, moms are wont to do. She'd get annoyed with us in the living room, and she would be like, go play in your room. And I'd be like, but it's red out here like the desert. And she'd go, go in your room and play in your bed. Pretend your sheets is the snow. Go do that or whatever. And, that's what it was left for me to do. I went in my room. I had to listen to my mom. Me and Steve would have icicle fight. That was something I remember. We would like break them off from things and like try to dagger each other with icicles. We were always wary of icicles hanging from the edge of the house. They were like stalactites or stalagmites. I forget which one is the one that dangles down, but we'd be wary of those. You're always hearing about some kid getting impaled, through the arm or like right through the brain by a giant falling icicle. I never witnessed this myself. I'm happy about that. But we would get them off and like smack each other with the frozen piece of ice, or like try to stab each other through our snowsuits. That was fun. Sometimes we'd like throwing knife them at each other using garbage cans for shields. This was back in the day, dude. Kids were wilder. We would duke it out seemingly to the death. But, luckily no one was the worse for the wear, as much as I recall. Probably some bruises and stuff. But let's take a quick commercial break, And then we're going to come back. We're going to talk more about Illinois. We're going to talk about, like, places I went, stores that were there that aren't here in California, stuff like that. It's going to be fun. More good stuff to follow.
If you think you know what Zare is all about, take another look. It's a whole new store.
I can't get over the way it's changed.
A lot brighter.
More cheerful.
There's so much to choose from.
Everything's so nice.
I like the change. I really do.
There's so many lovely things.
Beautiful.
Really pretty clothes.
It really is a whole new store.
Beautiful. They sure made it look a lot nicer.
Beautiful.
I love it.
If you haven't seen Zare lately, you haven't seen Zare. Come on, take another look.
Get to Zare and get it all.
One of the really big culture shocks, and there were a lot in moving from Illinois to California, was that none of my Illinois stores were here in California. I mean, some of them were, there were like a few here and there, but not like the stores that we would go to every week. For example, Zare's, that store that you just heard in that commercial, that was like our Kmart, and we would go to Zare's like on the reg. We would go there for just about everything that you didn't get at the grocery store. It's where we got like our furniture, our TV. I got like a ton of my toys there. And when we moved to California, there wasn't Zare's. We quickly moved to Kmart. Kmart was something that was in Illinois, but we didn't go there because we were a Zare's family. And there was like a ton of differences between a Zare's and a Kmart, but there were some. I have like this image in my head of what the good old Zare's looked like back in Illinois. If I'm remembering correctly, it had, a big light up Zare's sign in the front, and the interior was all white. Like the walls were white, the shelves were white, everything was white, and the toy department was all the way in the back in the corner. I remember this the most. It wasn't like a giant toy area. It was only like a few aisles. Remember how it used to be? It would be like 1, 2, maybe aisles of like boy toys, and then across the aisle from there were like the girl toys and the Barbie and stuff. And then since it was in the back, there was like a giant wall where they would store the bikes. They had like a 2-tiered like bike rack. I don't know if we got my bike at Zare's. I kind of think my family got my bike secondhand from somebody, but I wonder if they initially got it from Zare's. I was always tripped out by those double-tiered bike displays. They seemed super dangerous and super sketch. When I think back of the Toys R Us and how the Toys R Us here in Santa Rosa used to look, I remember how all throughout the middle there was like a giant metal rack full of bikes. It was like a two level things. There were tons on the bottom and tons of bikes on the top. And then there were also, like your wagons and like your four wheel pedal cars and all that stuff. But the Zare's had them up against the back wall. The one super distinct memory I have of the Zare's was a time that my grandma, she lived in Tennessee, and she came to visit us in Illinois one summer, and she's like, I'm going to take you to Zare's and I'll get you any toy that you want. And for whatever reason, when we got there, I picked a Mego Gene Simmons Kiss figure. I wasn't even like the biggest Kiss fan in the world. To be honest, I can really only name like a few Kiss songs. All of my Kiss memories are based around like Kiss videos and Kiss comic books and Kiss toys. But at any rate, she did not want to get the Gene Simmons doll because she's just like, I don't want my grandson playing with a doll. It was that era. She wanted me to get, a bike or maybe like a BB gun or something more manly. But I wanted a Gene Simmons doll. I wanted a doll of a guy wearing makeup. I wanted this super bad. If I remember correctly, I hemmed and hawed, and eventually she relented. Having this doll, though, it got me painted as a Kiss fan. Like, if you asked my parents what my favorite band was growing up, they would say Kiss. People would get me like Kiss gifts for a while, like Kiss posters and Kiss shirts. And I swear to you, I don't even know if I can name a Kiss song. Is Detroit Rock City? Is that a Kiss song? What's that one where they're like, I wanna rock and roll all night and party every day? Is that a Kiss song? I think it is. I don't know. But for like the longest time, I got painted as a Kiss fan. It was so weird, just because of this stupid Gene Simmons doll. So weird, man. If you look back, you'll find pictures of me with like Kiss stuff, Kiss posters, and I don't know, dude, just the illusions of time. It's like when you're a kid, you really have no input into what you're a fan about. People make you a fan of whatever they want you to be, and because of this dumb doll, I got painted as a Kiss fan. Zayre's had a restaurant in it, in the front. I remember that too. We never, well, I'm not going to say never, because maybe we did once or twice, but I don't remember like regularly eating at the Zayre's restaurant, but I did know that there was one there. I did a bit of research, and I found out that the Zayre's in Oak Lawn, where I used to live, is now a condominium site. There's condos there, and sadly, the entire chain of Zayre's went down in 1990. It's a bummer, man. I hate hearing about entire chains going down. I think about all the people who lost their jobs, and just all the memories. I'd like to think that maybe someday I would have been able to go back to Oak Lawn and seen the Zayre's, but sadly, that will never happen.
Now, even deeper discounts. 73 stores of Zayre's are going out of business and must liquidate millions of dollars of inventory. Save 25 to 50% and more on everything in every department. Not a clearance or odds and ends, not selected markdowns. Everything has original price tags. Cashiers deduct an additional 25%, even on items already reduced 1/4, 1/3, and 1/2. It's the Zayre sale you'll never forget. Nothing held back. Everything. Come in now. 73 stores of Zayre's are going out of business.
That's a sad commercial. Closing sales are sad. Also, it's just, I don't know, man. It's weird. It's weird to hear people like picking the bones. They're trying to get you to come and buy the last things, and I realize they need to get every penny they can before they close. I get it. It just seems so sad to me. I guess it seems sad to everybody. We would shop at a grocery store in Illinois called Jewel. Jewel was our store. We would go to the one that was in Oak Lawn, and right next door to it was Osco. Osco was our drugstore. That was our CVS. The Jewel and the Osco were door-to-door neighbors, and we would hit up the Jewel every week to do the grocery shopping, and then when we were done, we would dip through to get, whatever it is that you get at drugstores. Drugs, I guess, drogas. I did like a small bit of research. Jewel is still a booming chain of grocery stores. They have 3 locations in Oak Lawn, Illinois. One on 45 West 100th, one on Ridgeland, and one on South Pulaski Road. I don't know which one would be the one that we went to. I'm thinking maybe 103rd Street. We lived on West 90th Street, so that seems like it would be in the neighborhood. Let's look at the store details over there. It's a Jewel Osco. They are now combined. I remember the day that happened. We would go to the Jewel regularly, and then one day they announced that they were going to be closing down for a while, and that we should go check out the other Jewel across town. And it was like a good month or so or whatever. And then when they reopened, the Jewel and the Osco were connected. They put a big door right in the middle. Well, it wasn't a door because it wouldn't open and close. They combined the 2 stores. It'd be like 1 second you're in this one, next second you hop over and you're over at the Osco.
Hey Bears fans, I'm Sarah, back with another week of Jewel Fan Man.
And I'm Alex Brown. We're here at Oak Lawn giving away Bears-Packer tickets. Let's go find some fans.
Shouldn't be too hard to find some Bears fans over at the Jewel Osco in Oak Lawn. I remember there were some diehard dudes. My dad's a diehard dude. My uncle's a diehard dude. My cousin from back there, they're all hardcore Bears fans. I dig it, man. The soldiers of the Midway. What are they? I don't know, man. I don't have a lot of, well, I'll be honest, man. I have like no allegiance to Illinois sports. I have like green and gold going through my veins. I'm an A's fan. If you asked me to pick a football team, I guess I would say the Raiders, but I don't really watch a lot of football, so I don't have any kind of like special allegiance to them or anything. But let's see, what else do I remember about the good old Jewel Osco? I remember doing the Pepsi Challenge. They had the Pepsi Challenge set up over near the bakery. They would do like this gimmick where you would like blindly taste 2 sodas and then they would ask you which one you would prefer. Ideally, you would pick the one that was Pepsi. I wonder if they were both Pepsi. I don't know, but I did get the chance to do it, and I did pick Pepsi. I thought that they were recording me for a commercial. I remember thinking that the taste test commercials were like a big deal at the time.
You're about to take the Pepsi challenge. You know, I have 2 bottles of cola back here, and you don't know which is which.
No, I don't.
We have never met before.
That's correct.
Right, okay. Except at my sister's wedding, you know. But beside that, we have never met. Okay, now I'm going to pick this up and tell me which one you chose.
Pepsi!
You know, in tests like these nationwide, more people prefer to taste the Pepsi over Coca-Cola.
Pepsi's much better.
It's delicious. It's down nice and smooth. The taste is good.
It's great. Take the Pepsi challenge. Let your taste decide. Right, guys?
Right!
So, yeah, I partook in the Pepsi challenge one time, and I was, like, certain that they were recording it, that they had, like, secret cameras. I remember trying to be all pithy and funny, trying to, I wanted to make the commercial. I used to be, like, quite a ham back in the day. I also remember that they had a cookie club at Jewel. If you were under like 12 or something, you could go to the bakery and get a free cookie every visit if you were accompanied by your parent. And that was like the highlight of the grocery trip, would be that I would be able to go and get a cookie from the bakery every time we went. I had to wait till we got home to eat it, but that was cool, man. I still I remember that the cookies were like thick and like super doughy. They had like this very, very distinct taste that I haven't found in another bakery style cookie. They're very doughy and yet dry at the same time, but I loved them, man, and I was all in on the Jewel Cookie Club. I did a small bit of research too. They still have the Cookie Club over at Jewel. Now you can only get a chocolate chip cookie. I recall at the time that you could pick from any of the lower tier price cookies, but now it's a chocolate chip cookie. It's called JoJo's Cookie Club. JoJo is like the Jewel Osco mascot. He looks like the blue monster from what's that? Monsters Inc. But he's red and he's wearing like a Jewel Osco football jersey. I wonder if it was the JoJo Club back then. I don't think so. It might have been. I seem to just remember it was like the Jewel Cookie Club. Hot dogs were also like a super big deal, and they don't really feel like a big deal here in California. For example, we would go out and get hot dogs way more than we would go out to get hamburgers. And in California, we'd go out to get burgers all the time. In Illinois, it was hot dogs all the time. We would go to this place called Enzo's. If I remember correctly, I only have the vaguest memories of the actual place, but I have very strong memories of the Frankfurters themselves. The buns were like sesame seed buns, and the hot dogs came with like pickles and all sorts of garnishments and adornments. And we would get a bag of chips. A bag of Jay's potato chips instead of French fries. That was like the normal run out and get something like a real quick type meal. I'm thinking a little more about those potato chips. Those Jay's chips were the jam. That was the Illinois brand that I remember above all others. Well, White Castle. We would get a lot of White Castle hamburgers, and we don't have White Castle here in California. I haven't had like a White Castle burger since we left Illinois, and we used to have them all the time. When we did get burgers, they did tend to be White Castle burgers. Now that I think about it, Enzo's hot dogs. It might have been Enzio's. I'm not 1,000% sure. I haven't been able to find any kind of references to either online, but I will admit I didn't look super hard. But the Jay's potato chips were like a big deal. When people would go back, like when we lived in California, every once in a while, like my uncle would go back to visit somebody, or they would come visit us, from Illinois. They would always bring bags of Jay's potato chips. That was the out-of-state treat that we saw the most often. I think that nowadays when I eat potato chips, they're like Laura Scudders, maybe, or Lay's. I like Lay's. I thought it was weird that in Illinois we had Jay's, in California we have Lay's. I think Lay's are everywhere now. But at the time, I thought Lay's was like this regional outfit, and that Jay's was the big game in town. There was also this thing that's like the vaguest of all the memories that I have. Well, not the absolute vaguest, but this one is super vague, and I've tried to pull it out like a million times. I've asked my mom and my dad if they remember this. I've asked my uncle, my cousin, all these people who used to live in the area, and nobody seems to remember this but me. But at one time, I think that there was a store that sold plastic tubs of like homemade potato chips. Like they were made on the site, like kettle chips. They would sell like, how when you go to like Food Max or one of those places, they sometimes have those giant tubs of low quality ice cream. You know what I'm talking about? Not like dryers or anything, like the store brand, really bad, super soft, not so good ice cream. Well, they would sell like those type of tubs, but full of homemade potato chips. They had different flavor potato chips. I remember there was a pickle. I remember there was a tomato flavor that I wanted to get up on. They also had like bigger bins of like broken potato chips at cheaper prices. And I remember these being the greatest potato chips I've ever eaten in my life. And I like a potato chip. A potato chip it's okay with me, man. I think they're great. I only have the vaguest memories of this place. I've done, a super cursory type web search, and I haven't found anything. If you guys remember something like this, or if you guys had something like this around where you are or were, let me know. I'm a bit curious about this. As I was sitting here right now, I started thinking back to the refrigerator. I tried to envision what was inside the refrigerator of the house. I thought that if I could see that, maybe I could get some more like food type memories. But what happened that was interesting was I got like a great image of the layout of the house in my head. The kitchen was over on one side, and then it shared a wall with like the living room, and then on the other side was my bedroom on one side and my parents on the other, and then there was like a small like washer dryer room. It wasn't the biggest house in the world. It was a small house, but we did have a super duper big backyard. I remember that the living room had like a red carpet, and that there was a lighter color in my room, and I seem to remember my parents having the red carpet as well, but that's only like the vaguest of memories. It was kind of the layout where the kitchen seems to dominate everything with the the table that you eat at, and then the actual like kitchen food prep space. That seemed like the biggest, most active area of the whole thing. Anyhow, let's take another quick commercial break, and then we'll come back and I'll talk about my school and things like that. That should be fun, and then maybe a bit more, and we'll start getting ready to get up out of here.
Have some of your Jay's potato chips? Well, okay, but just one. Two? Well, maybe. But first you have to run around the block. Okay. And dress up Spike in your sister's clothes, and then teach him how to walk on two legs and play the trumpet. Jay's. Can't stop eating those J's.
I could really go for some J's right now. I found out that J's got bought out by Snyder's, the pretzel company. We sometimes get Snyder's. I like the really big sized Snyder pretzels. They're kind of crunchy, and I dig that. But they bought out Jay's, and people say that Jay's doesn't taste the way that Jay's should taste back in the day. I don't know. The name of the school that I went to when I lived in Illinois, in good old Oak Lawn, was Harnew Elementary. Harnew was within walking distance of my house. I would walk to school every day at first. The younger grades, my mom would come with me, but after a while, I would go with like Steve, the kid who lived next door, or whatever it was super close. I remember you could just go through the alley and through somebody's side yard, and there you were at the school. I think it was like a little bit longer than that, but not very much at all. The grades of Harnew were from kindergarten up to 6th grade, if I recall. And I started there in kindergarten. I remember my most distinct kindergarten memory is that we had like a giant rug that took up like half of the classroom, and that everybody would have to sit on the rug like alphabetically. It was girls over on one side and then dudes over on one side. You know, the front row would be like the A's and would go all the way down to, you know, the Z's would be like behind the very first guy. And then we would sit there with the teacher in the middle doing the lessons, and that kindergarten was only like half a day at the time at Harnew. Eventually, like, I know 2.0 went like a full day at one point, but kindergarten was half a day. We'd go home at noon, and then there would be like another squad of noon kids that would come in to finish up the rest of the day. I remember like passing these afternoon kids and wondering what their stories were. Like they seemed so interesting. Like there were some, you know, when you're that age, you're just like looking for new dudes to play with, and I would see these guys going by, and some of them look cool, and I'd be like, man, I'd like to play with that kid, and I would never see them except for in the passing of the shifts. Lunch was also like a deal in kindergarten. Well, the fact that like you didn't get to have lunch at school. This is how I recall it. And again, I don't know if this is 1,000% correct. This was a bone of jealousy between us and the afternoon crew. The afternoon crew got to have lunch at school. Like when they got dropped off at like 11 or whatever, soon afterwards they would have lunch. But if you were in the morning crew, you had to go home and have lunch with your mom. You know, you were having like a cheese sandwich and a pickle. Whereas if you were in the afternoon crew, you had a lunchbox and you got like a sandwich and a cupcake and a milk and whatever side, usually pickles. I remember pickles were like a super popular side at the time with the lunchbox set. Also Doritos. Doritos were the hot chip. Doritos and a pickle, what all the cool kids would have back at Harnew Elementary. But this was like a bone of contention that they got to have lunch like 1 year earlier. Another thing that caused a lot of jealousy at the school was lockers. There weren't enough lockers for every kid in the school. So once you got past kindergarten and you were up into like full day school, there was the opportunity to get a locker, but this is how it worked. There was always 2 teachers for each grade, right? So the teachers would alternate years with their class getting the lockers. So I recall starting off first year, and my teacher had gotten the lockers the year before, so that year we didn't get lockers, but the other first grade class had lockers. We had to carry our stuff with us all day. They got to have a locker, which is dope. You get like a personal space in the school that's all your own, and then you get to learn the mysteries of a padlock, which seems super dope. It was, man, such a disappointment to me. My first 2 years coming out of school. First, I was in the crew that didn't get a lunch. I didn't get to have a lunch box for 1 extra year. And then the next year, I didn't have a locker. I felt like the world was out to get me. One of the things at the school that was like the super most popularist thing to get from the school commissary. Well, it wasn't even really like that. It was the office lady had some small supplies for sale. And amongst those supplies was NFL pencils, like pencils with the colors and the names of the various NFL teams on the side. If I recall correctly, there were 2 for 25 cents from the office lady. You had to go up to her directly, and there were certain teams that were way more popular than other teams, as you can imagine. I recall the Pittsburgh Steelers. That was like a black one with yellow writing. That one was super popular. People wanted that black pen. The Dallas Cowboys was silver with blue writing on it. People wanted that. Of course, people wanted the Bears. You know, everybody wanted the Bears, and I myself didn't have like a super affiliation to anybody at the time, so I remember enjoying the Houston Oilers. Their pen had the oil rig on the side, and in pencil, rather, had the oil rig on the side, and it was white with blue. I remember getting that one. This was something I had put thought into a few years after I left Harnew. Everybody wanted certain pencils, right? But the lunch lady, the office lady, was the one who would decide what pencil you got. Do you think that she had some sort of like personal stake in this? Do you think that she gave the pencils that people wanted to the kids that she liked and gave, the bad pencils, for example, the Packers? Nobody wanted the Packers. The Packers were like the enemies, the natural enemies of the good old Bears. So nobody wanted that. Do you think that like she would give the kids who were stinkers, she'd go, here you go, boom, you have the Packers, or here you go, you have, I don't know, the Washington Redskins, boom, or one of these teams that wasn't doing so great at the time. I remember the Vikings were another team that everybody hated because they were like a close proximity to Illinois. So we hated them. We hated the Packers. Nobody wanted those pencils. Do you think the office lady gave those to the kids she didn't like? My guess says yeah. The policy was you weren't supposed to ask for any specific pencil. You got what you got. You get what you get, and you don't throw a fit. But I wonder if there were kids who had better relationships with her who would ask and receive pencils that they wanted. In my years as an NFL pencil purchaser, I remember only once getting a fantastically cool pencil, and that was the Pittsburgh Steelers. And this was during like the heyday of like Mean Joe Green and that commercial where he gives that kid his towel.
Thanks, Mean Joe.
That commercial's weird, because what is that kid doing in the corridor unescorted? It was a different time. Kids went all kinds of places unescorted. I remember being in just like all over the place, all by myself as a little kid, but that's just what it was like back then, and there's nothing wrong with that. That dude, Mean Joe Green, was such a big celebrity. I didn't watch football in any form at the time, but I knew who Mean Joe Green was. I had this image of him in my head. I knew that he was like a football player, and I knew that he was mean, and I heard dudes talking about how he would just devastate other guys, and I kind of built him up in my mind as sort of like a mythical Mr. T type. I saw him as just like a trash-talking evil dude who would just like wail on guys until they were nothing but bloody pulps. But then I saw that commercial, and I'm like, I don't know, guy seems like a sweetheart, seems all right, seems nice. I don't know. Maybe you just got to ply him with the Coke, and he's all that, to you. Maybe, I don't know, he'll give you his towel, and then you can have a sweaty towel of your own. How long would you keep the towel before washing it? Would you ever wash it? Would you ever wash it and maybe use it as like your own gym towel, or would you keep it with Mean Joe Green's sweat? Because maybe someday you can clone him and you can be his agent, make a grip a change when he enters the NFL of the future. I don't know. It's something to think about. Another big celebrity to me at the time, and this is a bit off the school topic, but it's age appropriate, was Bozo. Bozo the Clown. They used to shoot Bozo out of Chicago, and every morning before school, I would watch this show. My favorite part was the Bozo buckets, where there would be like a line of buckets, and you'd have to throw balls into them, and each bucket was, further and further away and had a better and better prize. I forget what the grand prize of the whole thing was in Bozo buckets. It was like an early game show type thing to me. I would watch this every day and I would dream about the chance to get to go throw Bozo buckets. I never got to go see Bozo. A lot of kids I know did. All you had to do was drive into the city. I think you would mail in and request tickets, or call and request tickets, and they would give them to you for free. They needed an audience of kids, and they just might pick you out of the thing to be the Bozo Bucketeer. I would stress out thinking about it. Like, at first I would think it would be fun to get a chance at those buckets, and then after a while I'd be like, oh my gosh, it would be so stressful, and I would hate to miss like the first bucket and look like a total simp on the show that everybody at school watched. Everybody used to watch Bozo before school. Dude was such a big Illinois celebrity. I think that ultimately they franchised Bozo, and there were lots of different regional Bozos all over the place, and each major metropolitan area had their own, would be how I'd imagine it is. But I don't know. It seems like such a Chicago thing. We didn't have it when I moved here to California, so once we left that behind, I never really saw Bozo again. I guess I could go on YouTube and look up some Bozo episodes, but I don't know. It doesn't seem doesn't seem like something to put onto the top of the priority list. There's a lot of 80s toy commercials I got to look up first. Maybe at some point I'll get to Bozo. But let's get back to Harnew. Harnew, when I first started going there, did not have a school mascot like a lot of schools had. You know, we weren't like the Binkley Bobcats or the Rincon Valley Falcons or whatever. There was nothing. We were just good old Harnew Elementary. And one day that all changed. We got called into the gym for a big rally or whatever. And when we got in there, I saw they had 3 different teacher representatives up on the stage. There was a lady who was the office lady, not the nice one with the pencils, the mean one who was actually like the principal's secretary. And then there was a janitor, not the nice janitor that people liked, the older, rougher one, and then the gym teacher, not the gym teacher who gave me an Aikido flip in the famous gym class episode of This Boring Life. This was the other gym teacher there was a lady that people liked. She was cool. We didn't see her a lot. She would come in and do like square dancing and other things, but she seemed like a sweet lady and everybody liked her. And then the principal for the school, Mr. Wujek, got up and he was like, "It's time here at Harnew that we adopted a mascot. It's time here at Harnew that people knew who we were and what we were about. I have 3 representatives from the faculty, each one representing a different mascot. When I say their name, I want you to cheer if you like the mascot. First up is the office lady. She represents the Harnew Gophers. Let me know if you like the Gophers. Up next is the creepy night janitor, and he represents the second mascot that we have the option of picking, and it is known as the Harnew Aardvarks. Okay, I can see that you don't like the Aardvarks. Let's move on to the third option of the 3 options that we have. This one is with the gym teacher that you all like, and I want to know how you feel about the Harnew Hawk! And when he said it, the gym teacher jumped up with a big vinyl banner with the Harnew Hawks, with this big Harnew Hawks logo on it, and she's like jumping up in the air and waving it, and the people are going banana. They are going absolute banana. I remember jumping up like, yeah, Harnew Hawks! And we were all in that. I had like a Harnew Hawks hat. I bought a Harnew Hawks shirt. It was my jam for a while, dude. I would wear this Harnew Hawks beanie almost like every day. Our colors were blue and yellow, and I had this Harnew Hawks beanie that was like the kind with like a fuzzy ball at the top, and it said Harnew across the front band. I wish I still had that. I want it so bad. I wonder where it went. I knew that I had it here in California. I used to wear it in my early Binkley days. I wasn't ready to give up my Harnew identity. I would wear this beanie even though it was like 95 degrees out. And you know, in my later years, I've come to suspect that the whole thing may have been set up. I think that there may have been plans for us to be the Hawks before the whole big assembly, but I don't know, man. It all worked out for the best in the end. It's a good memory. Go Harnew Hawks! Let's take a quick commercial break. I gotta regather my voice after all that yelling, man. I got the Harnew spirit. We'll be back in a sec we'll talk about some of the things I did. You know, like activities, like Cub Scouts and such. I will be right back.
Our weekday mornings with the superstars.
The fun starts at 6:30 with Woody Woodpecker. Then it's classic cat and mouse games with Tom and Jerry. At 7:30 there's Bedlam in Bedrock with the Flintstones. And at 8, see the Guardians battle the sinister renegades on the GoBots. Then it's Jace against the evil Sawboss on Jace and the Wheeled Warriors. It's all here. Weekday mornings beginning at 6:30 on Sunrise Superstars on 32.
WFLD is one of the stations I remember watching. They had this show, The Son of Svengoolie. It was one of those creature feature type hosted horror movie shows. Son of Svengoolie had like a top hat and sort of like curly hair. I'm doing this off my best memories, like curly hair off the side, and he wore like black eye makeup, and he was into like all kinds of wacky hijinks while he was hosting the movies, like these bad style horror movies. This is the channel I remember watching cartoons on. This particular bumper isn't for something I would have watched per se, because I noticed it had the GoBots in there, and I know the GoBots didn't start popping off till I was here in California. I looked it up. WFLD is the local Fox affiliate at this point. I don't have like a ton of super distinct Illinois TV memories outside of Bozo Buckets and Son of Svengoolie, but when we moved to California, I remember really sweating not being able to see the Son of Svengoolie anymore. I couldn't tell you like any of the movies that I watched on the show or any of like his particular hijinks. I do recall he would make like parody commercials for different products. There was one it was like Hawaiian Punch, but it was like blood, like Transfusion Punch.
We're gonna go transfusion. Transfusion punch out your pangs without using your fangs. For any quick transfusion.
Yeah.
Transfusion punch is more than just tired blood. It's a combination of 7 blood types and plasma for the taste any vampire loves. We're gonna go transfusion. Transfusion punch is the spot if you're anemic or not. You wanna go transfusion.
When I was living back in Oak Lawn, I was a Cub Scout. My dad signed me up for Cub Scouts, and I thought it was great. I had such a good time. I was a member of the Greater Chicagoland Area Pack number 327, the good old Fighting 327. We would meet in the gym of Harnew like twice a month for big meetings, like when the entire area would get together, and this was like a big thing. There would be the entire gym was packed with all the kids and the parents, and this is where you would get like the latest Cub Scout news. But then you had like smaller groups of a pack. I think, if I remember correctly, the pack was the larger group. That was the one that would meet at Harnew, and then you belonged to like a smaller den, and your den would have a different number. I don't remember what number my den was, but we would meet once a week in the den at the rotating group of like parental chaperones. You know, you'd call them den leaders or whatever. And we would meet with the den leaders all the time. My parents were den leaders. I don't know why they weren't. They just weren't. They weren't into it. They signed me up probably to get me out of the house, but I was into it. We didn't do a lot of like outdoorsy activities, as I recall. It was mostly like inside of people's kitchens. At the kitchen table, we would learn about different things and play like board games or word games and stuff like that. I do recall one time we went out into what seemed like a small wooded area. It seemed like a large wooded area at the time, but in my brain I realized it was like a small patch of trees, and we learned some wilderness survival tactics. I thought that was pretty dope. We took matches and we dipped them in wax so that they would become waterproof. We learned how you could like dig a trench, like dig a hole and put plastic over the top. You would put like a rock on the middle of the plastic to make the plastic dip down, and then on the interior of the hole you'd put a cup, and the condensation would create water for you so you wouldn't die. I've never had to use that trick. I've fortunately never been to the point of dying from not having water to where I had to do this. And also, at the same time, had some plastic wrap with me. But still, though, you know, I do have like a survival bag that I could grab if there's ever like a zombie apocalypse. It's in the It's in the closet of the Earth base. There's like various like foods and knives and things like that for when when it all jumps off. And in there is a piece of plastic wrap. So just in case, I run out of water when I'm out there dodging the Walking Dead, I will be able to survive. Don't worry about me. In Cub Scouts, you have to get like merit badges, and to do that, you have to fulfill certain qualifications. We didn't do like a ton of outdoorsy stuff, so we mostly focused on like the various crafty ones. We would make like leather craft things and get merit badges for that, or make like beaded Native American style adornments, and we would get merit badges for that. We weren't like the Fighting 327 wasn't like the toughest crew around or anything. We mostly would be in people's kitchens. Like I said, we would have cookies and milk and make leather things. And every once in a while, we would go out and go in the wooded area, the glen. We'd go over to the wooded glen, or maybe go play wiffle ball outside. Still, though, it was a super duper time. I really, really, really enjoyed it. It was cool because none of the kids in my den were kids that I went to school with. So I got to meet like a whole new crew of dudes, and we were already like, we were a den, so we all would be friendly and cool toward each other, right? We were all in the same gang, as it were. And also, because these weren't kids that I went to school with, I got to like act however I wanted without the constraints of having people who already knew me, if that makes sense. At school, you kind of already have to some degree an image. So it was cool to go do Cub Scouts and be able to just like be whatever I wanted, be whoever I wanted, do my own thing. I remember one time we had a deal where you could bring in a board game, and then the kids would pick like what was the board game we would play. And I was lucky enough to have one of the greatest board games of all time, The Dark Tower.
Last night I journeyed backwards in time to the medieval world of Dark Tower. In this amazing game, I had to find 3 keys, lay siege to the tower, and defeat the enemy within. Each move was a challenge. The computer kept track, giving me secret information, pictures, sounds, surprises. Then, ahead of my opponent, I made my move. The battle was joined, and I was victorious. Dark Tower from MB Electronics.
Do you guys remember that game? I kind of think you do. It was a board game that was centered around this large plastic tower that was battery operated, and it would have different buttons and things and just like lead you through the game sort of like a dungeon master would. I got this game for Christmas one year, and I never, not ever, got to play it because I didn't have a bunch of nerds living around me that would want to. And this one time that I took it with me to Cub Scouts was my big opportunity to play it. And lucky enough, everybody saw the tower and they voted for the power of the game. And we had like a rousing round of the Dark Tower. It's one of my greatest like role-playing game memories. It was awesome. I was the one that knew how to play, and I got to teach everybody, and we had a marvelous time, man. Cub Scouts was so much fun. There were 2 like super big events that the entire Cub Scout year revolved around, and these were 2 things: the Rain Gutter Regatta and the Pinewood Derby. The Pinewood Derby was the bigger of the 2, and the way this works was you got like a small kit with a wood block that you would shave down, and 4 wheels that were like attached with nails, and you would on your own or with your father make the car that would represent you in the biggest race of the year. This was something that involved the entire pack, every den, and it was a single elimination tournament. The way it works was they had like a giant track. It seemed gigantic. It was pretty big, though. The dude who dropped the cars down had to climb up a ladder to get to the thing. It was this big, like a hill, right, with 4 or 5 lanes that were separated, and they would drop the cars down the lanes, and, the fastest car wins. All the losers are out until only one car remains the king. This was the big one, dude. This was the big event. The Rain Gutter Regatta, I'll talk about that in a minute, was secondary, but it was the one that I preferred. I would enter the Pinewood Derby every year, naturally. My dad at the time was working at a graphics shop in Chicago, and he had the hookups for dope stickers, and I always had a very well-decorated car. The one that I remember the most was one called the Scorpion. He got these really neat, like, astrological sign stickers that he put on each side, and we had, like, black stripes over an orange body. The deal with it, though, was that guys were, like, super scientific with their cars. Some people put weights in the front. Some people thought if you put weights in the back, it would be better. Other people implanted weights in the body, all to increase the overall tonnage of the car, in theory, so that it would go faster down the embankment. Me and my dad weren't really down with these tricks that people knew. It wasn't that we wouldn't do it, because we definitely would have. We just didn't put a lot of thought into that area. Our main focus was on the appearance of the car. And I always had one of the sweetest cars in the Pinewood Derby, but I was also always eliminated in the opening round, which was quite a bummer, man. The entire Cub Scout year built up to this, and my car would always lose. One time, it actually, like, rolled down and got stuck. They had to go and push it. It didn't even complete the whole thing. It was quite a sad sight. I still have the Scorpion. I don't have all 4 wheels. I only have 3, but I do have the body. I should just go online and get a whole new kit and replace the wheels. But I love looking at this thing, and I love thinking back about the time and the effort that my dad put in to detailing something. It was a real sweet car. It still is a real sweet car. I always had the sweetest cars, sweetest but the slowest. I did much better, though, at the Rain Gutter Regatta. That was a boat-based version of the Pinewood Derby. They would get like 2 long rain gutters and filled them with water, right? And you got a kit where you would build a boat, much like you would build a Pinewood Derby car, but whereas the Pinewood Derby was very dependent on gravity and weight, the Rain Gutter Regatta was, you had more at play in this one. You would have to run alongside your boat and blow it with your breath. You'd be like huffing and puffing and trying to push it down as fast as you could. The boat that we built that stands out in my mind the most was one called the Pegasus. It was a white and blue boat, and my dad got he got these fantastic Pegasus decals at his graphics shop, and we put them on the sail, and we got like the word, the Pegasus. We used those letters. I don't know if you remember these. You would hold them onto the paper. It was kind of like a heavier plastic sheet, and you would rub it off with something, and the letter would come off and stick to whatever. We used those to spell out the Pegasus on the side. It had some great pinstriping. One year, I actually came in 3rd in the Rain Gutter Regatta. I don't know if it was the same year that I had the Pegasus, but I do remember coming in 3rd. I had a trophy. I have it around here somewhere. I know that I didn't throw it away. It was kind of small, maybe like 4 inches or so rather, and it was dope. It's in 3rd place. It had the name of the pack and everything. It was a lot of fun. I was happy to have that. I recently took just about everything out of the office on the Earth base and, organized it into boxes so I could start fresh with a bunch of new stuff. And the trophy was amongst that stuff that got put in the garage. I'll pull it out someday, and when I do, I'll be happy. I really did enjoy Cub Scouts. I enjoyed it quite a bit. But when we moved to California, for whatever reason, I didn't continue on. There was a pack at school at Binkley when we moved here, but I had a hard time making friends when I initially moved here. I've said this a couple times, but it was like a massive culture shock moving from the Midwest to California, and I didn't feel like close enough to anybody else to actually join up. But in retrospect, that was something I should have done, because I might have made some friends, might have got into some activities, and it might have made that transitional period a lot easier. But what are you going to do, man? That's all in retrospect. If we ever moved 2.0, like to the Midwest with a reverse culture shock, I would nudge her into joining activities and meeting people. But that's all neither here nor there, because it all turned out fine. I highly recommend scouting to anybody who has kids of that age. It's fun. It's cool. It gets them out of the house. It has a lot of positive qualities. They really teach like being nice, being cool, being brave, being prepared. All these things that you really should be in life. Another thing I did in Illinois, and we're gonna start winding it down. I'm gonna talk about this, and then maybe like one other thing, and we're gonna try to take it home. But another thing that I did when we lived in Illinois was go to Sunday school. There was a Baptist church like right around the corner from where we lived, and my parents signed me up for Sunday school Bible study when I was young. I had a lot of fun doing this too. It was like the sort of church deal where there was like a lot of game playing, a lot of running around and doing stuff and having fun. And there was also, there was some Bible study, which I can appreciate. I like to learn about different things, and this is definitely some important stuff that you should know about. So that was fun too. If I remember correctly, the Bible study was in the basement of the church. They had like a children's room set up in the basement down there where they would do that, and there was like a ping pong table and a pool table and other things like that for the kids to be occupied with, and like wholesome style activity sort of deal. We had a lot of fun back there. The ladies who ran it would make every week seem like a special week. They would have some sort of activity plan, some kind of game or whatever. I remember once they did a like let's make a deal kind of thing, like that like the game show with Monty Hall, and I was picked to go up, and there were 3 boxes on the table, a small one, a medium one, and a big one. And the grand prize of the thing was one of those water games where you like push a button to like shoot little puffs of air so that you can I think this one was basketball, if I remember right. These games were made by Tomy, and they had different varieties. One was where like you had to get a ring on a peg. It was like a vertical thing, like you would sit it on the tabletop and push the button to get the little puff of air to guide the basketball through the hoop. And I wanted this like something bad, and I picked the largest box because that's the only one that the game could have been under, and instead there was like a little bag of M&Ms. I was super disappointed. I remember being like almost in tears. I was probably like first grade or second grade, and I was like almost in tears, and I didn't want the M&Ms. I was like, no, I don't want them. Keep the M&Ms. It turned out that the game was under the medium box. It was smaller than I thought. I was so upset. The church lady was like, well, we'll keep the M&Ms, and when you decide you want them, you just ask for them and you can have them. And I'm like, I'll never want them. I'll never want them ever. And if I remember right, I think that I left that day without the M&Ms, and I never got them. But if I also remember correctly, when I got home, I thought to myself, what a dummy. You could be sitting here eating M&Ms, but instead you have nothing but dried up tears on your face. That's what it's like being that young, though. You're dumb. You make dumb decisions. You only think emotionally, and you cry. You cry at the drop of a dime, or at least I did. Over the summer, there was a big church thing too. It was It was essentially like a church daycare kind of thing. It would go for a couple hours every day, Monday through Friday, and basically you'd get dropped off in the morning. Your parents would pick you up around lunchtime, and during the time you were there, instead of being down the basement, we were actually like up in the main chapel, and you know how there's like a row in the middle and pews on each side. They would split you up into teams, right? And the different teams would have different names, and you would compete against each other in various games. They would keep score over the course of the summer, with one team winning, one team losing. The teams' names were determined by the mascot. They had a mascot that would lead each team. Now, one team had Big Bird. They had one of the parents or one of the dudes dressed up in like a full-on Big Bird outfit, and he was the leader of that team, and he would like run around and cheer and lead everybody. And the team, this is the one year I remember distinctly, the team I was on did not have a mascot at the beginning. It must have been that the costume didn't arrive in time or whatever. So we didn't have a mascot for like the first couple weeks in, and we were getting tromped by this other team. We would get destroyed because they had like Big Bird on the sideline, like cheering him on and every single thing, and we had nothing but the pastor or whoever, and that might be cool, but it wasn't as cool as Big Bird. But then one day we were in the church doing the morning rally, and the pastor's like, "Hey guys, guess what? We got somebody that you want to meet," and like the doors burst open, and like, I remember he looked like, what's his name? Elmo on Sesame Street, but bigger and like darker red. And he runs in, and the pastor's like, "Big Red!" And he became like our mascot. And we were so stoked to have this guy, Big Red, on our squad.
No little cinnamon gum freshens breath longer than Big Red.
So kiss a little longer, laugh a little longer, stay close a little longer with Big Red. That Big Red freshness that's right through it.
I don't know that having Big Red on the squad turned the season around, but it was dope having our own mascot. And man, we were into Big Red. I don't know who it was who was under the Big Red outfit, but this guy was so much fun. He would like run around and act all cool and act all silly, and we were just like, all we wanted to do was hang out with Big Red. We were so into this dude. Like, getting a high five from Big Red was like the highlight of the week. I remember this stuff so fondly. And the day that we left, the last Sunday that I went to Sunday school at the Baptist church, it was super emotional, like saying goodbye to all my church friends, because these were kids that I did Bible study for like 3-4 years, you know, and I would see them regularly. I would see them over the summer, and leaving this group was almost harder than leaving school, because school was fun, but there's also like bad memories at school. School's not always fun. The youth group was always fun, and it was super sad. I cried a ton. I remember being there just like sobbing, and it was hard to say the goodbyes to these guys. They gave me this neat plaque that had like the name of the church and a picture of Jesus on it. It was pretty cool. I have it. It's in the other room. I still have it up. It's nice memories. This was another thing that I didn't continue on when we moved to California. I didn't continue on in the Sunday school world. And like, looking back at the episode, you know, and the stories that I've told, I hadn't really thought of it this way before, but I didn't really continue any of the things that I did when I was in Illinois when we moved to California. And I think that if I did, things may have been different. And I think that they all turned out fine. But I did have a few years where I definitely struggled with like finding dudes to hang out with, and socially, I don't know if I ever like 1,000% recovered as far as like status at school or whatever, because I wasn't like a true California blood, and that's that's something that it feels like people actually considered at the time. And I don't mean like, they were like, you're not pure California blood, you will not be counted. But what I mean to say is like, the people that they knew since the jump always had an elevated status from newcomers, especially standoffish newcomers like myself who don't participate in any group activities like the rest of them. I don't know, man. It's weird to look back. It's always weird to look back, and doing these episodes sometimes, it's like I'm looking back with such a fine comb that you get like new enlightenment from these past stories. The thing that, for whatever reason, sticks out to me the most, and I'm going to say this is probably my most pleasant Illinois memory. When I look back, I swear this is the thing that I remember the most fondly was Hot Dog Day at elementary school, at Harnew Elementary. Every Wednesday, you would get sent with a couple dollars that you would turn in an envelope in the morning to the teacher, and you would use these dollars to buy hot dogs, which were then delivered to the classroom. And for lunch, you got to eat hot dogs instead of your normal lunch box fare. In Illinois, a hot dog is like, it's like a religion. So this was a big deal, and I remember getting these hot dogs, and they were like the highest quality hot dogs that I had had up until that point. They seemingly went all out. They were like steamed or boiled hot dogs, rather, with steamed buns wrapped in wax paper. When you got them, they were like a little bit moist on the inside, and they would wheel in a cart with like the hot dog condiments, the mustard, the ketchup, the onions, the sauerkraut. Sauerkraut's like a big deal in Illinois hot dogs. I only recently got back into putting kraut on my wiener. I was at the Schultz Ice Arena, and I bought a hot dog, and they had the condiments, and amongst them was sauerkraut. And I'm like, oh snap, I haven't thought about sauerkraut in I don't know how many years, and I put it on, and the vinegary taste goes really well with the sweet of the hot dog. So they would have that and the onions and all that fun stuff that you would put on an Illinois hot dog. And the way that they were delivered to the classroom was amazing too. They would be brought in. There was a student who would get picked every week. There was like a lucky kid who got to go and pick up the hot dogs, and I'll talk about that because I was actually picked a couple times. That's a whole separate amazing memory. The way they were brought in was the kid would come in the door with a laundry sack. Imagine like a laundry duffel sack. It was blue, and it would be full of hot dogs, and then you would have the hot dog list, right? The hot dog list with all the kids and how many wieners they were going to get. Most people got 2. Sometimes the girls would get 1. Occasionally there would be kids who would get 3. I was like a 2 hot dog guy at the time. Now I'm only like a 1 wiener guy, but at the time I was a 2 hot dog kid, and the 2 hot dog kid, that could be my cowboy name if I ever need one. The hot dogs were just so great. It was so delicious. The smell of the boiled hot dog was like overwhelming in the classroom because there was like 30 kids at a desk, with 1, 2, maybe 3 wieners, and the smell would get in the air. It was heavenly. It's like my favoriteest of all the memories. I look back and I think Hot Dog Day. Hot Dog Day was the greatest day of the week. It may have been the greatest day I've ever had. If I wrote a biography of myself, like I wrote my autobiography, I might very well title it Hot Dog Day, just because it was such an important thing and such a great memory. The best part of it was if you got picked to be the hot dog delivery kid, and you got to go to the hot dog room and pick up the frankfurters in the duffel sack. The hot dog room was a small little, like a kitchenette. The hot dog room was right off the library, and you would go inside and give the lady who distributed the sausages your sheet with all the hot dog signups, the hot dog list, and they would go down and see how many hot dogs you would get, and they would like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, stick them inside of the inside of the blue duffel sack, and then you would like sling the duffel sack over your shoulder, and you got to walk down the hallway with all the other kids, because like the other kids would be coming out after getting the wieners for their class too, and you would all be like walking down the hallway with your big duffel sack of hot dogs over your shoulder, and the hallway, the hot dog room would just get overwhelmed by the smell of boiled hot dogs. It was just so great. And then you got to go in the classroom, and you got to be the kid who passed out the hot dogs to everybody. You would go one by one down the rows, 1 hot dog for you, 2 hot dogs for you, 3 hot dogs for you, Ferris Hassan. Whoa. There was this kid, Ferris Hassan, who went to our school, and he wore a suit every day. Guy was dapper in the day, and as I recall, he was a 3 hot dog boy, so he passed out 3 to Ferris Hassan, 2 to Akram Zubi, maybe 1 to Rich Sock. These are all people whose names I seem to recall. I don't know if they were actual Harnew students. I hope so. That would be cool. I hope they're doing great. And with that, I think I'm gonna get out of here. I'm gonna try to get out of here. It was such a weird deal moving from Illinois to California. I know that I've said that a few times. I cannot express how weird it was. It was like moving into the world of 90210 from the world of like the almost Leave It to Beaver like suburbs. Just very, very strange. Kids had peg pants. I didn't even know you could do that to your pants. Kids had the pegs. Kids had like sunglasses. Nobody in Oaklawn wore sunglasses, and I myself, I wear mine every day. So I guess, time has marched on. I've become a California dude, and that's all fine. But there is like a part of me. It's deep, and it gets deeper all the time. But there is still like this Illinois part of me. It kind of comes out when I see my relatives. Like if I see my aunt and uncle, they live here in town, and they're from Burbank. They're from the same area, the next town over from Oaklawn. When I start talking to them, it all really comes out. But I'm happy that you're here. I'm happy to share these memories. I'm happy to get them down. Happy to get them down on audio cassette. So, with all that said, this is me, IseeRobots, signing out for this boring episode. This is me, IseeRobots, signing off for This Boring Life, episode number 9, Illinois.
This boring life, I can't get boring. This boring life, oh, this boring life, I can't get much boring. Boring life. This boring life, I can't get boring. This boring life, oh, this boring life, I can't get much